This is a random thought. For context, these are my opinions based on anecdotal experience and are subject to change. If you have opinions or thoughts that you'd like to add, you can put them in the comments. Subscribe, like, and donate if you'd like more content like this. Aggression is a behavioral compulsion and is generally a desire to engage in a form of conflict. Even though aggression isn't an emotion, I consider it a limited resource. Now, in looking at the resources of aggression that people in general have, I like to put it on a scale and split that scale into two parts. On one end of the scale are people who have very little aggression, people who will look for an excuse to avoid conflict and need a lot of convincing to actually engage in it. On the other side of the scale are people who have a lot of aggression and actively look for excuses to engage in conflict. These individuals need convincing not to engage in it. Both sides exist on a sliding scale. On the far left of the scale are the people who avoid conflict. As you move right on the scale, people gradually get less conflict averse. The far right of the scale is conflict-orientated people, and as you move left on the scale, people become less compelled to engage in conflict. At the center is the bisection of those who look to avoid conflict and those who seek it. On the far right of the graph, though a minority, are the most aggressive people. It favors people who find themselves in leadership positions or places of power, as those positions require the ability to deal with a certain level of conflict. Or it gives them the ability to create conflict for their own personal advantage. People on this side of the graph tend to have less empathy, which can provide a certain level of disconnect between the majority of people and their business or public leaders. You may find some people on the right side of the scale actually believe that they are in the majority. Their low or lack of empathy hampers their ability to understand other people's perspectives and can lead them to believe that everyone else is just like them. This belief can lead them to rationalize reasons for why others would act with empathy or compassion. For them to act in those ways would require coercion, which in their mind is oppression. This results in their belief that they, and by extension everyone else, are victims of a conspiracy. In their mind, it is a conspiracy that forces everyone to have to play nice and blend in like zebras in order not to be persecuted for what they perceive as humanity's natural order, quote unquote. For those on the right side of the scale who do understand that others aren't a copy of themselves and that others do genuinely have empathy, their realization that others are not coerced into acting like they have empathy does push them closer to reality. However, it can also push them to see empathy as a weakness. They see no value in worrying about the problems or harm caused to other people. This can result in their indifference or apathy to the troubles of others outside or even inside their own family. They can feel unrestricted by a moral compass and consider that to be an advantage rather than a hindrance. What these people miss, however, is that empathy is a necessary evolutionary trait. Social organizations require empathy to maintain cohesion. If you're unable to understand what other people are going through, or how other people feel, you can miss important cues. Cues that could indicate that there is a systemic inefficiency that is harming you or could harm you in the future. Cues that others could act against you or against the social structure that you're a part of. You would also miss the ability to help people within your social structure do their job more effectively. By helping them do their job more effectively, you will increase productivity and efficiency. Empathy can also help you recognize what type of emotional resources and how many emotional resources other people have. This is why empathy evolved to be what it is. To disregard its necessity is inefficient. If you fail to understand the necessity of empathy, you will fail in understanding your surroundings. For some, it is beyond their ability to understand the emotional states of other people, as they lack the empathy and intelligence required for that. For other people, it takes work, though the vast majority of people find it easy because they have empathy. For the intelligent on the right side of the scale, they understand that the majority of people are different from them, that the majority of people are the way they are for an evolutionary reason, and that the genetic success of humanity and our social structures require both empathy and aggression to survive and thrive. Aggression seeks conflict, and conflict is a risk. When engaging in conflict, whether it be social, physical, or organizational, you are taking a hostile act against an opposing force. If you engage in social conflict against an opposing force, you can risk your own social standing. This can lose you your social support network, such as friends, family, coworkers, acquaintances, etc. You can also lose your job, income, and your physical support network. When engaged in physical conflict, you are risking your own physical well-being, where even a victory could leave you permanently injured or mortally wounded. And since humans are a social species, physical conflict can also risk the same social consequences on top of the physical consequences. Organizational conflict is engaging a social structure in conflict with an opposing force. The opposing force can be an individual or a separate organization. The risk here may not be to yourself, but the organization itself, whether it be a company, government, or any other social structure. Most organizations have built-in protections for the people who make the decisions, such as golden parachutes, shareholder priority, or prosecutorial immunity. However, some organizations have reorganized themselves to at least provide some accountability for those who make the decisions in their respective social structures. These can be democratic institutions, separate branches of government, lawsuits, fiscal liability, or fiduciary responsibility, etc. These elements can temper the desire for organizational conflict. These restrictions on aggression can prevent unnecessary conflict, or it could prevent the organization from acting to defend itself, resulting in it losing a forced conflict. This means having a balance in terms of limitations and accountability is necessary. Due to the risks involved versus the potential rewards, the vast majority of people tend to fall in the area of desiring less conflict, the center left of the scale. This recognizes that the more often that you gamble, the more likely you are to lose an encounter, depending on the scope and risk of the conflict, of course. People on the left side of the scale tend to have more empathy and be closer to being able to understand the perspective of the opposing side, which can lead to more cooperation instead of conflict. This has the effect of limiting unnecessary conflict that can cause collateral damage. There are risks for choosing to engage in and choosing not to engage in conflict. Choosing not to engage in conflict can cede ground to more aggressive competitors who, if successful, can use those increased resources to increase their odds of winning the next conflict. However, there is always a rate of diminishing returns in a pattern of aggression to constantly obtain more. It eventually becomes self-destructive, especially on an individual level. Having a personal aversion to conflict or a desire for conflict is based on genetic predispositions which have allowed our ancestors to survive and successfully pass on our genes. The reason that the vast majority of people don't engage in much conflict is it usually costs more resources to engage in it and risks more than the benefit of success would be, especially in the case of physical conflict. However, this doesn't mean that you should avoid conflict altogether. Being able to deal with conflict allows you to act more rationally based on the situation. It also means that you won't get railroaded by someone who forces conflict upon you. So, what do you do if you don't understand the empathy of others? If you feel compelled to engage in constant bouts of aggressive social or physical conflict? You could find a socially acceptable alternative. It's far easier said than done, as it has to match your personality and skill. However, it is something that you can strive to do. On the physical end, there is boxing, MMA, wrestling, arm wrestling, hockey, football, etc. Most sports include this. On the social end, there are organized debates, gaming, and writing. Yeah, writing. You'd be surprised. So there are many alternatives, though if you fundamentally cannot shake the need to engage in unconsented conflict, you should understand that most societies will prevent you from causing the harm that you desire. Though there are some societies that will allow you, or at least not prevent you, from causing the harm that you want. Now, what do you do if you're a person who is conflict averse? Well, you could find a comfortable social setting to engage in an amount of conflict that you're comfortable with. Again, easier said than done, but slowly exposing yourself to more and more conflict will get you acclimatized to it. Talk to people that you trust and start slowly expanding your social circle. Once you get comfortable enough, it can help to join activities like the ones listed for those who are looking for ways to be confrontational. You should keep a diverse net of information and listen to many different perspectives. Understanding our differences can help us reduce collateral damage, increase our agency, benefiting ourselves and others. Again, this is just my opinion. If you agree or disagree, or if you have more information, you can leave it in the comments below. Anyway, that's all for now. If you want to support me for the services provided, you can subscribe, hit the bell, and like the video. Also, my Patreon is below, or you can hit the join button. Until next time, ciao to y'all.